Well, it's been an adventurous last couple of days. Man, I apologize for not showing up consistently like I promised. So we took off for the holidays, and it turns out in order to record videos, upload and edit videos, you need to have the videos with you. So we arrive in San Antonio, and I don't have my hard drive that contains all video footage of my training. How about that? So, luckily, well, not luckily, I decided to just drive back home in a day's trip, get my gear, and here we are. Now, I didn't get to finish. I've had to stop deadlifting simply because I'm in a spot where I don't have accessibility. And actually, which I actually covered in a live Q&A that I will um, add to the screen here, where I talked about minimalism, right, and the differences between body weight, kettlebell, and barbell. And one of the major downfalls of barbell training is accessibility, right? Kettlebells you can take with you everywhere. Like up when I came up here, I brought my bells with me. Body weight, you've got that everywhere. Barbells, can't pack those up so much. And so luckily, I had a piece of footage here from, I'm not sure how I missed this day because I've been posting every day, but somehow I had an extra day of footage. And this was prior to my initial crash and burn. This is where I was this was about 75% weights here, and I was pulling a ladder of 235. So I believe this was the heavy day because I ended up doing four ladders of 235, so 40 total reps at about 170 kilos, which is around 375. And I started out with a little bit of a warm up, which is something I want to kind of talk briefly about. So I started with Pendlay Row. I love the Pendlay Row. Really works that upper back well, gets my lats fired up. And so I'll throw things like this in from time to time as a general warm up. I'm not like I mentioned, I'm not trying to train like assistance exercises or anything like that. I keep these pretty light. I usually stick to one plate, and it's just mostly for a general warm up. So you've got two types of warm ups. You've got a general warm up and you got a specific warm up. And just me personally, I'm not a, here come the air quotes, I'm not a warm up guy. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think you should have to spend all this time warming up. I love the, I think was it Zombieland? Zombieland with Harrelson, Woody Harrelson. And one of the I guess rules or principles of that kid that was in Zombieland was like you need to stretch, you need to warm up. And so I remember Woody Harrelson saying, do you ever see a lion stretch before he takes down a gazelle? The answer is no, right? So I believe you should always be ready. You should always take care of your mobility, flexibility, and you keep your bones moving. And I think if you follow that, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time warming up. So I've never been like a warm up guy. I don't spend a whole lot of time on warm up. A lot of my warm ups are specific warm ups. So a general warm up is very general. It has no relation really to the training that is coming, right? So let's say general warm up could be Pendlay Row. It's not the actual deadlift, but you're generally warming up. You're getting the grip involved. You're getting the back involved a little bit. You're getting the lats involved, right? A good general warm up could be some goblet squats with a get up on each side or something like that, right? It's a very general warm up. Then you have a specific warm up, which is specific to the training that is coming. So, and this is usually where the camp, air quotes, that I fall into is I'm like, look, I don't have a lot of time, right? I'm a busy dude. I, running the gym, running online biz, family. Like, I got a lot on my plate, right? Like you do. And so my warm up, as you've probably noticed if you've been watching these, I have them warm up one, warm up two, are the actual deadlift, right? It's specific to what I'm about to do. So sometimes I'll do like maybe a deficit deadlift, right? Which is again, I mostly use it to stretch my hips, but it's still the deadlift, right? So that's usually how I like to quote unquote warm up. If you're working on presses or jerks, you can use some lighter presses and jerks as the warm up. Okay, so this saves a lot of time, but again, I'm not against warm ups. Okay, I'm not against warm ups. I've just never been a warm up guy. I like to just do a few specific warm ups and then just get right into it. And so, just something I wanted to touch on in today's video. But the next thing I want to touch on is what I don't like about my current approach right now. Um, as I'm into this 30 days of deadlifting, and this is, based on previous experience and just based on things that I've observed. What I don't like about my current approach is I'm setting myself up for potential intimidation of the weights. Here's what I mean by that. And by the way, I apologize for the crappy audio. I am not at home, so I don't have the luxury of my fancy desk mic and fancy computer. So I'm making this video from some wireless Bose headphones, which, pardon the audio. So again, so back to what I was saying. I don't like that I'm setting myself up for potential intimidation of the weights. Here's what I mean by that. So you have essentially two philosophies of programming, okay? Which this first one is one that I followed for a while, and I was not really seeing that much progress. For one, I sucked at deadlifting, but was this Western powerlifting cycling. I'm not bashing it because it's resulted in many records that have never been touched to this day. But what I don't like about it is, so let's say a traditional like American, Western cycling is, let's say a 12-week cycle, right? You're going to have 4 weeks. I think this is like a Marty Gallagher style cycle. You have 4 weeks of eights, then you have 4 weeks of fives, and you have 4 weeks of threes. So when you're doing 4 weeks of eights, you're starting light. And then 4 weeks of fives, you go a little bit, you go heavier, but you go heavier, but the volume drops. And then weeks of threes, heavier again, and then you set a new PR, I believe, in your like 3 rep max or something like that. And what happens is they're creating this inverse relationship between volume and intensity. And based on experience and the following the data for many, many Olympic cycles, there is no inverse relationship between volume and intensity. Sometimes volume and intensity go up at the same time. Sometimes they come down at the same time. Sometimes they zigzag in opposite directions. But you shouldn't intentionally create this inverse relationship. And that's what I don't like about my approach right now for this. This isn't my normal traditional approach. Is like the volume has come down, right? First cycle of this, I ran 347, and I was doing fairly lightweight, like 150 kilos. And now I'm up to 235, lower volume, but the weight's going up. So I'm creating this inverse relationship. And then eventually I learned the variable overload system, which is the Soviet method. I learned this from Pavel, which this is a faithfully adapted representation of the Soviet weightlifting methodology. It's called Plan Strong. This is something that I teach with Pavel. But when I was introduced to this, it was a game changer. At the same time, I was actually getting better at deadlifting, and this just became a game changer for me. So the variable overload method, created by Professor Arkady Vorobyev and many other top scientists, they created this concept of varying your load from day to day, week to week, month to month. And the average weight that you're lifting, so let's say in a preparatory period, which is like 4 weeks, a preparatory period, your average weight is equal to or less than 70%, usually between like 67 and like 69% is the average weight, right? And then in your competition period, your average weight is above 70 because you get maybe ready to peak for whatever reason. And what I like about this is you become within that average weight of, let's say, 67%. Within that, you're not just lifting 60% weights. You're lifting many weights. You're hitting the 80s, 85, 90. You're hitting those high reps. So literally every single day you're hitting those heavy weights, but the average intensity is sub 70%. And what I like about that is you become accustomed to lifting those heavy weights daily. What I noticed when I was following the old, like the original, like American powerlifting cycling, was by the time I was getting to fives and even getting into threes, anytime when I would get to like 85%, like I was just totally in my head. I was totally intimidated by that weight. Like I really had to kind of psych myself up and get myself ready because 85%, that is a weight that requires your full attention, right? And it's a weight that you have to respect. And so I used to become really intimidated by this. And as I look back, I was like, man, no wonder like I could never break past 405 because I wasn't training with these heavy weights on a regular basis, right? I was starting out light, high volume, and then as the weights increased, the volume decreased. So creating this inverse relationship. Then eventually, when I started learning the Soviet weightlifting methodology from Pavel through Plan Strong, again, it's a faithfully adapted training system that through the Soviet method is you're training all these weights all the time, and so I got used to pulling 85 and above on a every single training session. I'm not gonna say daily because I wasn't training daily, but there were weeks where I would train, 2 days. There's some weeks I'm training 4 days. There's some weeks I was training 5 days, but I was surfing all these different intensity zones, and that's how as I look back, that was one of the game changers. On top of getting better at deadlifting, man, I was just climbing leaps and bounds in my progressions in the deadlift. And it got to a point where I was pulling, man, I want to say it got to a point where I was pulling those 85% weights, which at a certain point, my 85% was 240 kilos, which is what, 529. Without a warm up, I could literally step up to 529 without a warm up and pull it without a thought. That's one of I was like, man, this is this is magic. This is the truth of fitness. And so I just became hooked. I became addicted to better understanding this system. And I basically took that system and I've applied it to all of our programs, all of our kettlebell programs. And it has been the game changer. It's why our programs have been so successful and they've been so effective in helping guys get stronger, like crazy stronger. Like traditionally, like if you're a beginner lifter, you're going to see some massive gains, right? As a beginner, you're going to see some massive gains in your strength. But as you get higher, dare I say, quote, elite with some of these numbers, your jumps are going to be smaller, right? So let's say if you pull 405 and you're a beginner, and then your next cycle you'll pull 440. Okay, that's a big jump. You can't continue to expect those gains. Following the Soviet method, I continued making crazy jumps. My last two cycles, where before I had my abdominal surgery, were still 20-kilo jumps. I think I was at let's see here. I want to say I was at 260 kilos, so it's like 573, 574. And then I went from 260 to 282 because I was pulling at the TSC. I was at 260. I pulled 270, which was a 272. I pulled 272, which was a PR. That's when I broke 600. And then I had my third pull. I pulled that third pull and I pulled 282, went up 10 kilos, 282. Ended up pulling, that's what, 621, something like that. So I went from 260 to 282. So I'm now over 600. So then I rest for a few weeks. I repeat the cycle. I'm on a whole new cycle. I'm writing a whole new series. After that, I go up again and I pulled 290. So I went up another 8 kilos, which is what, like 8 kilos is like is that 19 pounds, right? Something like that. So you don't normally see these big jumps, even as you become a. I'm not going to say I'm an elite lifter, but I mean, I don't know. When you get over 600, I would consider anybody over 600 a pretty advanced lifter. Normally, you would see those increases like a 5 pound increase, right? But no, I'm still making 19-pound increases, right? We went from 260 to 282. That's a 40 plus increase, right? And I think it's has a lot to do with that not being intimidated by the weights and pulling those heavy weights on a session by session basis on top of getting better at the deadlift, right? On top of that commitment to getting better at deadlifting. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm going to be making some when I get back home, and I'm going to be taking a look at how I want to approach the rest of this 30 days of deadlifting challenge. Right now, just I could tell moving into this thing, I can see myself setting me up for potential intimidation because right now I'm creating this inverse relationship between volume and intensity. Clearly, you can see a couple of episodes before this, I went up to 405, right? 184 kilos, 405, and I'm doing singles. Here's the thing about singles, right? To quote, Dr. Fred Hatfield, Dr. Squat, he said that, heavy singles, they peak your strength, but they don't actually make you stronger. Heavy fives make you stronger, right? And I totally agree with that. And again, I can see myself setting me up for failure here where I'm being too conservative, pulling singles, creating this inverse relationship again. But I am deadlifting every day, so it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky. I know that I will figure out a way to keep this going to where I can pull those fives, uh, pull those threes, pull those fives on a regular basis, surf different intensity zones, work my way up to where I'm pulling those 85s. It's going to take a little bit of thinking, but I know I'll come up with a solution, and I'm excited to whatever I find, whatever I come across, I'll definitely be sharing with you. Hopefully, it'll help out your deadlifting. Hopefully, it'll help out your strength training as a whole. But yeah, man, that's what I want to share with you today. If you want more information about this kind of cycling, check out Strong First, Plan Strong. I teach it. I teach it alongside with Pavel and Fabio Zenin, and it's a faithfully adapted representation of the Soviet weightlifting methodology. If you want to check out some programs or deadlift plans around this, I've pretty much archived a majority of our programs are no longer available, but I will drop in the description area a link to one of our most successful deadlift series, all right? And I will it's our deadlift series 260. I'll drop that in the description. You can check that out. And it's a series of deadlift programs. It's what's helped me go from these are the training cycles that took me to from barely pulling 405 to pulling 282. And so that's all I got for you today, man. I appreciate you watching, and I'll check you out on the next episode. Peace.